In history, there's no pistol celebrated more than the 1911. Today, some of the top competitors use the 1911 to make a mark on the competitive scene, and gun makers are continually upping the bar on maximum performance. In this video, we do the Fast Gun Shootout. So I want to kind of start off, why is this platform so loved? Well, there are just general shooting characteristics of the 1911-2011 platform that really no other platform out there does as good as these. You know, anything from how little muzzle rise they have in general, and the trigger is the most notable thing because the mechanism in it is actually sliding back and forth rather than hinging. So in short, you can have a really short break and a really short reset. And that's what really is sought after on this platform. Now, additionally, as you get into the competitive scene, you can actually tune these guns to ammo with the variety of springs and different combos you can go. It really is endless. And most importantly, especially in this set that we're gonna talk about, these guns hold their value very, very well. So you can use them, abuse them, and guess what? You're probably not gonna be out too far on them. Now I wanna leave a note for my manual YouTube reviewer. All four of these guns are configured from the factory this way. There is no modification of any kind done to them, and the only thing that you will see that's different is that they have an optic on each one, and that is not against YouTube policy. So let's get right into it. All right, so now I have all four guns here on the table, and I'm not gonna dive into heavy detail of each gun. I have videos on all these guns, and I'll leave the link in the description for those below. But the gun I wanna start with is going to be the Nighthawk TRS Comp. And what I elaborated on this video is that there's one gunsmith that takes pride in ownership of each gun that they produce, and so it is developed to the highest standards out there. Every single piece is built in-house from tooled steel, and they're actually oversized, so the gunsmith actually has to work them down to the correct size to ensure a perfect fit for everything here. In the hands, this gun feels great, and a lot of the weight bias is actually towards the front. It's not as extreme as the Staccato per se, but that's why you have these aluminum grips on here, as it ends up balancing out well. And so the intended market for this gun is meant to be tactical oriented. That's actually what TRS stands for, is Tactical Ready Series. It's going with the classic styling. You don't have serrations up front. And it's even sealed up in the front to hide the guide rod, so you don't have to worry about grit, grime, or anything kind of pulling out. Now, here's the thing, considering its application is tactical, its price starts at $5,199. Now, funny enough, there are options on this gun. Number one being this iOS system. So essentially what this is you end up punching a pin out through here, you're able to pull the slide out, put another slide on, and you're supposed to be able to do that within 20 seconds. Now the other feature on this are these ambi safeties. Now it's funny, of the bunch in here, it's got the narrowest. And one final thing I kind of point out that's kind of funny, and it's actually not an option through Nighthawk for this gun currently, is a magwell. If you notice, all three of these guns have a magwell on them. Not the TRS Comp. They will allow you to send one in and they can fit it for you, but they just don't offer it as an option. Now, all that said, with the ambi safeties, the iOS system, that brings the build total to $5,849. So the next gun we have here is the Terran Tactical Sand Viper. Now, if you're not familiar with this gun, its claim to fame is that it is the gun that John Wick uses. Now, to be more clear on that, that's actually the Pit Viper, which is the black and iron-sighted version of this. And if you're not familiar with the differences between Pit Viper and this, it's literally that, along with this beautiful copper finish. What I love about this is all the detail on this is very precise. If you actually look at all the cuts and everything that happens in here and how everything is finished, it is incredible and functional too. So when I actually grab these serrations, They work really, really, really good. Now, one thing I kind of want to point out that I wasn't necessarily a fan of was the grip safety here. So if you noticed on the Staccato and the Nighthawk that they have a little bit of a bulge on the bottom, and that's to help ensure that you get that down. When I mentioned this when I did the Sand Viper video, that I had an instant where I didn't push down the grip safety enough. So that's something I would point out specifically with this gun, but it has wider safeties on it, and holding it too, and this is why I like polymer grips, is that it's a little bit more molded to my hands. And one thing I'll point out beforehand in the shooting experience is that when guns are fit well to your hands, they inspire confidence. And when they inspire confidence, you tend to want to go and push harder. So that's one thing I really appreciated about this. Now, this is all hand stippling done right here in the grip, and it's incredibly effective. So what is the intended use of this gun? Well, I will say first, it's a high performance gun. You'll see that in the data when we do the actual testing on this, that this gun is not something that wants to get pushed around. But with the popularity of the John Wick series, the one thing that's interesting is what these guns command for in price, which this one on their website today is $6,999. If you were to go on Gunbroker as of the filming of this video, you'll find out that these guns are being asked for anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000, and there's not a lot of them on the market. So guys, you can call it what you want to call it. You can call it a $4,000 or $5,000 gun, you call the rest marketing, but guess what? As long as people are buying it, that's the price, and it's justified until then. Okay, so the next one we have on deck is the Masterpiece Arms DS9. Real name is the Masterpiece Arms DS9 Ported IDPA compliant model. Now, what's funny about this gun is its intended use is purely competition. That's who it's designed for. Could you certainly go out and shoot this gun and have a fun time with your friends? Of course. But the first iteration of the aardvark came out, and I believe around 2022, when they started allowing 5-inch bull barrel guns. And so MPA said, well, hold on a second, I think I can make the ultimate gun for those rules, and they did. And so this was the result. Now, you fast forward to 2023, IDPA became even more lax with the rules, and they allowed it ported and comp setups. So that's how all these guns became legal overnight. And so MPA's response was, because they don't have like a sight block setup on these comps like the other three have, is that they're gonna put 6 ports on these. So I'll pull this back, okay? You're gonna have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5. And what I like about it is it doesn't really inhibit the original design of this, so they're incredibly functional, and I can say that from experience. Of the other 3 that are on here, including the Nighthawk, this gun actually feels the most solid. This gun feels like a big hunk of metal in your hands. It is also the best balance, and when we talk balance, we're talking about weight being towards back here in the hands. And you'll see why when we get to the testing, that's critical. Now, the base price for an IDPA compliant model like this without the ports is $3,399. If you add the ports, that brings it to $3,525. But yeah, if you want co-witness sights for Trijicon or any other footprint out there, that's part of the package. So our final contestant here is the Staccato XC. Probably the most known gun of the 3 that are on this table, and probably also the most practical to live with, because Staccato has done a good job of making duty-ready 2011s, and yes, a real 2011 is the name here. And I've had a P for a long time now, and that gun has been absolutely reliable. It feeds anything. You know, cleaning is not what you think of a 1911 when you take a Staccato. I did make this comment in David's video when he did this, when I said these guns are always ready and willing to go and shoot. They are. And this XC was no exception to that rule. Now, the difference is that Staccato said, what is the most high-performing gun we can make? And this is what they came up with. It is the lightest gun of the bunch when you look at competition weight at 40 ounces. So again, that's mag, optic, everything. And getting on target happened quickly. Although that's 4 ounces, guys, it's where the 4 ounces count. And so getting on target happened very fast with this gun. It truly is a no frills, no nonsense, maximum performance, fit for duty or range. That's really the intended audience of this gun. And the price comes in at $4,299. And when you go to hold this gun, I love how they've done all the molding. There's some subtle molding that you really can't see in the video, but it's all very functional and purposeful. So this gun is really meant to be all business. All right, so now we're gonna get off into the shoot off. Now, before I do, just ask that if you like this video, please hit that like button, as that helps me a lot. And you're gonna wanna subscribe because I have all sorts of information out there. And if you're curious about competition, I have rig setups for USPSA, IDPA, and even Appendix. So you're gonna wanna check that out. This gun, the DS9, I actually shoot this in competition, so inherently I may actually have a little bit more time on that than the other three, but the results I think will be interesting. And notably, this review isn't possible without some contributors to provide me these firearms. Now, this XC is David's from the Humble Marksman channel, and you've seen me review this, so if you haven't, you want to check that out. And then these two guns, the Terran Tactical Sand Viper and the Nighthawk Customs TRS Comp, are both my good friend Calvin. Now, if you are in the DFW area, you gotta check out his taco place, which is OMG Tacos. Now, when I do this shoot off, I do it in the same day, and I rotate these guns throughout each exercise so it's not the same order each time, making it as dynamic as possible. Now, what I end up starting off with is a 25-yard dot drill, and I'm really kind of looking for the precision on how these guns handle, and as well as the average velocity to test the consistency of how these guns operate. And it's also important to know too, if you have different velocities, what you should think about when you're choosing ammo. So as I got into this, the beautiful thing about 2011s, especially ones of this caliber, is that they're going to be incredibly precise, as all these guns in this test were printing sub 3-inch groups. I'm pretty sure if I were to put this on a sandbag or a mechanical device, they would probably shoot sub 1-inch groups at 25 yards. So I'm not really going to focus too much on the precision, but the one thing to note was the average velocity. Now, the DS9, the Sand Viper, and the TRS ended up pulling about the same average, somewhere just a touch over 1,200 feet per second with Blazer 115 aluminum ammo. Now, the notable thing to pay attention to is the Staccato XC. Now, that may be because of the size of the expansion chamber as well as the actual effective barrel size. It had a drop of about 40 to 50 feet per second. So what does that mean to you? Well, whatever ammo comes out of this is going to come out a tad slower. So if you're looking for something with a different ballistic strength, you're going to have to take that consideration with specifically the Staccato XC. Now, if you're on the competition side of it and you are trying to tune ammo to the power factor floor, know that you are going to have to put something a little spicier with the XC, but that's the takeaway there. All right, so the first drill that we're going to do is a 25-yard build drill. Now I'm going to do 5 sets of these using an IDPA target, which is about 8 inches. So in short, I'm going to have to actually work harder to get good hits inside that box. Now we're going to use hit factor scoring, and I'm only going to take the best 3 out of 5 and weigh that average out here to give a ranking. So how this drill works from an ordinary build drill is that I will actually start with a loaded firearm on the barrel. The safety is on, so I'm going to have to disengage it each time. And at the start of the buzzer, I'm going to grab the firearm and shoot 6 rounds at the target downrange. Now, I am really trying to focus on accuracy and consistency here. Now, in 4th place came the Nighthawk TRS Comp with an average time of 4.267 seconds and an average hit factor of 6.094. Now, this one is interesting because all the other guns, my first runs were typically the best, and this one I kind of had to find my way around and try to find a sweet spot for that, and on the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th run I connected with those. Now, this gun is accurate and smooth, however, it just never inspired me to shoot it aggressively. I think that had a lot to do with how I picked it off the barrel and the grip I could get onto it, because the first one I went through was not very good. So I'd have to say that was kind of what kept me from doing a little bit better with that, is getting an ideal grip considering the time constraint I had to make this happen in. And in 3rd place was actually the Staccato XC. The average time for the XC was 3.867 seconds, which is in this world significantly faster. And the hit factor was actually what drew it back, which was 6.379. But the one thing I have to say is this is where you start to see the differences in guns, because this is one gun that I had more confidence in shooting it than the hits actually translated. And I never quite connected with the accuracy of the other two guns in front of it. And for that reason, while the speed was good, the hits just weren't there. The biggest time difference happened in how quick I picked up this gun over the Nighthawk. It was just easier to get onto target with, and that's kind of the advantage of having a lightweight gun. Now, what I had to learn as I shot this more and more in other drills and as well as in matches, I had to have just a touch more patience than I would have liked. And I'm confident when I say if I spent more time on the XC, I could do pretty good with it. Now, second place went to my Masterpiece Arms DS9. And funny enough, it wasn't shooting the fastest times, and I have the most times on it. Now, the average time came out to 4.093, but the hit factor was 6.847, which is the driving factor for this drill. That large part of that is because I could squeeze the accuracy out of that. Now, that may be a reflection of my time on this gun, but the thing is, I actually had to work the hardest to get the accuracy out of this. Now, that doesn't diminish that the gun's mechanical ability isn't there. It certainly is, but you're gonna have to work for it. Now, first place leaves us with the Sandviper. The Sandviper had an average time of 3.747 seconds and an average hit factor of 7.472. So what does that already tell you? That this gun is both fast and accurate. And for me, this was what's crazy, was I had literally the best three that I pulled had literally a 0.04 difference between the top and the bottom time. And I have to say that's because the information I was seeing in the dot and how the gun was handling was telling me to keep going for it. The dot came in just gently, and I knew at that point to throw off a round. And so what I have to attribute that to the gun's tuning, and as well as having a low optic in there, so I'm not getting a ton of exaggeration on there. This is where you start to see little details they put in the engineering that may not be so obvious make a huge difference. All right, so the next one we're gonna go into is the recoil impulse. Now, what we're looking for here is the tightest grip that we can get at 10 yards on an IPSC target. And keep in mind, when I'm shooting these doubles, I'm pulling the trigger as quick as I can. So there are gonna be some flyers here and there on there, but that's why we wanna push the guns like this, because these guns being both comped and made to be the ultimate shooting experience should shine in this particular drill. In each set I do 5 pairs, so that's 10 rounds, and I do this 5 times for a total 50 rounds through this drill. And so coming in 4th place was the TRS Comp. Now it's funny because I looked at my first string and the hits on that, but you'll see my first string was just everywhere. That had everything to do with my grip not getting there. I find for whatever reason, all the metal grip guns just don't have quite the confidence-inspiring ergonomics to really engage the gun. And that showed my first set, and it was so bad that I could see it from back there. So I made the adjustment and I went after it. Now, those groups started to tighten back up to about a 7-inch group, more so on the wide. You'll see that the group in general is just a little bit longer and wider. What I loved about this gun was actually the trigger. Although it may have the heaviest pull at around 3 1/4, the reset on it is what I absolutely love. As I started to sink into this drill more, I was able to squeeze off the occasional 12 splits. Now, the next one, I was actually surprised I wasn't able to do better with this gun on this drill, and that was the Sandviper in 3rd place. Now, the good news is it didn't get wide. It just shot vertically up and down. It translated to about a 7 to 8 inch group. So when you have a sub 2-pound trigger and you're pulling as quick as possible, you're gonna have a dispersion. And most likely what's happening is as it's coming down from recoil, I'm already hitting that trigger again. So what it suggests is I was able to get my grip balanced on the left and right side. It's just my trigger discipline has to match it, or I would have to adjust it to get a tighter group out of it. In 2nd place came the DS9. So it was getting a slightly tighter group of about 6 to 7 inches, but it was the most felt recoil of the bunch. And with all that feedback that it's telling you to engage the grip more. So what I've come to learn to do specifically on this gun is engage it more with my support hand. And so I'm able to still produce fairly accurate and fairly good shots, but for someone looking for perhaps something with a little bit less feedback, the DS9 is not going to be the highest on your priority. And in first place, this is where the Staccato really found its groove. Anytime the Staccato shoots in a straight line or on a drill where it's speed, it dominates. A large part of that is because number one, it's balance. Two, the way it's designed to reciprocate fast. And number three, the light trigger makes it easier to match up that quick, fast cycling action so you can get on target quick. Although it finished first, it was the liveliest to handle, meaning that when you were trying to track the dot to kind of see how things were going, it was the wildest. And that's just a result of how fast the gun is just actually cycling through. The good news is with its tuning and the way it's meant, the recoil impulse is actually really soft. So as you're watching me do the doubles with it, there's not a ton of muzzle rise. And I will tell you that the gun feels soft in my hand, pushing it as hard as possible. I want to kind of circle back on the DS9 is you'll see if you were to compare all four of these that the DS9 cycles the slowest. Now this is partially the attributing factor of probably why you feel more recoil in it. Because the thing is, that this gun was originally not designed to be a ported gun, whereas these guns were designed to be comped guns from the get-go. And as such, this is where physics takes over, because I weighed the slide on my DS9 versus the Staccato, and there's a 2.5 ounce difference. To keep that in simple plain terms, guys, that is literally an optic and a half on top that this thing is having to push back and forth. So only momentum will tell you this: the more weight you got going back, you're gonna feel that, right? Once it hits the stop, and then it's gonna take its sweet time because it's gotta build momentum coming back into battery. Versus the other three comp guns don't have quite as much reciprocating mass coming back into battery, so it's softer and quicker return to battery. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the final drill, which is a transition drill. So this is where I spend a lot of my time in competition is shooting multiple targets. Now, what I'm gonna do is what we call a stagger drill. That's for the shooter bend stagger. And so this is how this works. I'm gonna place a 12-inch steel plate at about 10 yards, and then I'm gonna have 3 USPSA targets that are gonna be placed downrange, with one being at 10 yards, which is gonna be my wide one, another one at 15 yards, which will be the middle, and then there's gonna be one directly in front of me 20 yards downrange. So the idea is, starting from low ready, is that I'm gonna come up to the steel, that's my start, and then I'm gonna start to transition to my 20, bring it in, keep going back and forth until I've shot all 3 USPSA targets, and then come back and finish on the steel. And that'll be my recorded time. Just like we did in the 25-yard bill drill, we're gonna pay attention to hit factor, and we're gonna take the average of the 3 sets, and we're gonna see who won. Now, this was surprising to me, and this maybe probably has more to do with me and my time on this gun, which is the Staccato XC. It came in at an average time of 4.827 seconds, and the hit factor was 9.396. What I had a problem with is over transitioning, and you'll see that as I go down this one where I particularly had a Charlie on each target, and you could tell it's just outside the alpha zone. That's because I was just over transitioning and thinking that I was there. Now, what also kind of inhibits it for me is that the balance of the gun has a little weight towards the front. And so why that's important is you're swinging this thing in transition, the more weight that you have out here, you're creating a pendulum effect. So until you get used to that, and what it feels like in the back of your mind is you gotta slow down earlier than you think, you're gonna have shots not go where you may be used to. Now, coming back into third place would be the TRS Comp, and its average time was 4.813, so barely faster than the XC, and it had a hit factor of 9.542. So when you look at it that way, it narrowly escaped getting out from the XC. And this was one gun I came out swinging out of the gate because my first run was a 4.56, but I suffered for that because it did pick up a delta out there. So what I had to do is just back it off a tad, because the interesting thing about having a nice weighted gun is it can put more confidence in your hand. And like I mentioned earlier, the shots just don't show up where you'd like. So I backed it off for the final 2, and that paid off well for this gun. And what I really like about the TRS is how smooth this gun is. Whether this gun is cycling or going from target to target, the gun, it just feels so smooth to shoot. And now, coming in second place, this may surprise you. It is the Sand Viper. And it came in with an average time of 4.487 seconds, so noticeably faster than the TRS or the Staccato, but its hit factor was 10.105. And it had the quickest run at 4.36 seconds. Now, that was the third run, so maybe with a little bit more time, I can probably squeeze more performance out of the gun. But what I love about this is when you look at all three hit factors and scoring, it's literally a hit factor of 10.2, 10.02, and 10.092. Super consistent. And coming in at first place, you guessed it, is now the DS9. Now this is where this gun shines, because this is what this gun is built and made to do, is shoot competition. So not only does it kind of perform in a straight line, but it absolutely has to crush it on transitions. A lot of that, and where you gain that advantage, is in the balance of the gun. And I'll give you an example. So I'll take the XC because this is a good extreme example. So there's a trick here, and these are unloaded. So you want to take your middle finger and create a perch on the flat part closest to your palm, and you're going to put that under here like so, just having the muzzle point up just a little bit. Get your thumb under here. Now if you notice I got my finger up here, I'm holding it right now. And so if you do it right, you'll figure out where the weight bias is. And so I'm taking my finger out. It's very muzzle heavy, right? Now I'm going to take my DS9 and do the same drill. Okay, so I'm going to get it up in there in that perch, make sure it's there, and then I'm going to let go of this finger up here. So here it goes. Okay, it's not moving. And so the reason for that is because if the muzzle's pointed up, that means the weight's going back. So where's the weight? In the hands. And so what that equated to in results was an average time of 4.733. So touch slower than the Sand Viper, but the hit factor was the winning factor at 10.331, because I had two runs that were all alpha. Now, it also had the best run overall. Not the fastest at 4.53, but when you have all alphas, your hit factor is 11.038. I will say that the guns that feel the most confidence in your hand also produce the best times on a lot of these drills were the XC and the Sand Viper. Something about them, guys, when you pick up a lighter gun, you can engage the target that much quicker, but the challenge is making sure you actually get the hits you're looking for. And so with time and training, you probably could extrapolate the performance probably even over the DS9. All right, now, so let's talk about who these guns are for. Well, here's the TRS Comp. It's for that guy that just wants a truly hand-sculpted gun that delivers the highest level of practicality and performance. That's who this gun's for. You're going to be able to enjoy passing this down to your son or daughter and know that this gun is not only going to be taken care of, but will keep going for years to come. Now, the Staccato XC is really for that guy or girl that wants the ultimate performance with no frills, just straight business. This is the closest thing out there that you can get to buying performance, because I will say this gun is so good that it really is almost a cheat code in some people's hands, because I've seen mediocre shooters do really good things with the Staccato XC, so that's who this gun's for. Now, and of course, we cannot forget about the Aardvark or the Masterpiece Arms DS9. This is really for the serious gamer. I think we've gathered that through the tests, through its initial design, that what this gun is meant to do is go and win matches, and it does it well. That's who this gun's for. And finally, we have the Sand Viper. This is truly for that person that when you want to put a gun in your hands, you want to feel like John Wick. Well, believe it or not, this is pretty close, because this gun inspires confidence, this gun performs, and it looks great. The cool thing about this even more is that because of the John Wick series and its popularity, it's gonna hold its value, probably the best of the three here. So you can hold on to this gun forever and know that you'll probably have a good chance of holding your investment in it. And so that's who this gun's for. Now guys, I know you're gonna ask, of all four here, who's the winner? Well, seeing as how I love every one of these guns, and I can think of a reason to buy each one as well as compete with one, I think it's only fair for you guys to decide. So I'm gonna have you guys sound off in the comments below on who you think the winner is and why. And so until next time, we will see you guys at the range.